Gloria had always loved her job as a French teacher at an elite boarding school, nestled in a breathtakingly beautiful, secluded area surrounded by nature's wonders. Her students were her pride and joy, and as the new school year approached, her excitement grew. Everything seemed perfect until a new student, Carad Fernandez, arrived and disrupted the harmony of her classroom. Dressed in shabby clothes, Carad quickly became the target of judgment and ridicule from her classmates. Despite Gloria's efforts to help Carad fit in, the tension only grew. But as Gloria learned more about Carad's tragic past and her mysterious guardian, Francisco, she discovered that there was much more to this seemingly indifferent girl. Little did Gloria know that her connection to Francisco would reignite old feelings and lead to a life-changing decision. As Gloria faced the challenges of her job and her feelings for Francisco, she realized that sometimes life's twists and turns can bring unexpected happiness. If you are not subscribed, I recommend you subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any videos. Gloria could hardly contain her excitement as the new school year approached. She had spent the last year as a French teacher at an elite boarding school, catering to the children of wealthy families, and the experience had been nothing short of a dream. The school was nestled in a breathtakingly beautiful, secluded area, far removed from the bustling city life. Majestic pine trees surrounded the campus, their fragrance lingering in the air, while a serene river meandered nearby, providing a constant melody of flowing water that brought Gloria peace each night. She considered herself incredibly lucky. The cozy little cottage she shared with the geography teacher was situated right on the edge of this picturesque landscape, allowing her to drift off to sleep each evening to the soothing sounds of nature. Among the many things Gloria cherished about her job, her favorite was undoubtedly her class of 12-year-olds. These bright, lively students had won her heart with their boundless energy and infectious enthusiasm. They approached every lesson with curiosity and embraced every challenge with open arms. They weren't just learners, they were adventurers. Together, they had gone on hiking trips, organized concerts, performed plays, and even helped plan school fairs and festivals. The bond between Gloria and her students had grown strong, and she found herself missing them deeply over the long summer break. She longed for the lively chatter, the eager hands raised in response to her questions, and the way their faces lit up when they learned something new. Thankfully, the flurry of activity involved in preparing for the upcoming school year helped to distract her, making the days pass quickly. However, the night before the first day of school, Gloria found herself unable to sleep. Despite the familiar, comforting sound of the river outside her window, she lay awake, her mind racing with nervous anticipation. What would her students be like after the summer? Had they changed? Grown taller? Would they still share the same enthusiasm for learning? As these thoughts swirled in her head, Gloria tossed and turned, until finally she gave up on sleep altogether. Long before her alarm had a chance to go off, she was wide awake, her mind buzzing with thoughts of the day ahead. She rose from bed, heading for the shower in the hopes that the hot water would help clear her mind and fully awaken her senses. After her shower, Gloria made her way downstairs to the kitchen, where she prepared a simple breakfast cheese toast and a steaming cup of coffee. The familiar ritual brought her some comfort, and she allowed herself a few moments to savor the rich aroma of the coffee before heading back to her room. Standing in front of her wardrobe, she selected a new blue blouse adorned with a delicate bow and paired it with a sleek, professional skirt. She carefully pinned her hair up at the back and added a touch of elegance with her favorite silver earrings. When she finally looked at her reflection in the mirror, she smiled approvingly. She was ready to face the day, ready to welcome her students, and ready to begin another year filled with challenges and triumphs. As Gloria stepped out of the cottage, the crisp morning air greeted her, carrying with it the refreshing scent of pine. She inhaled deeply, allowing the natural beauty of her surroundings to calm her nerves. Her mind turned to the upcoming lesson yesterday. She had caught glimpses of a few of her students, and she noticed that many of them had grown taller and sported sun-kissed tans from their summer adventures. Today, she planned to ask them all to share their vacation stories, but in French, of course. She also intended to introduce a new grammar topic to ensure they jumped right back into learning without missing a beat. When Gloria arrived at the school, she made her way up to the second floor where her French classroom was located. As she approached the door, she paused for a brief moment, standing on the threshold. This had become something of a personal tradition for her last year. She had done the same thing, silently wishing herself and her students a successful year ahead. With a deep breath and a sense of quiet determination, she entered the room and walked over to the bookshelf, selecting the textbooks she would need for the lesson. There was still a half hour before class began, so Gloria sat down at her desk and opened a fresh notebook. She began writing down the names of her students, but suddenly her pen hesitated as she spotted a name she didn't recognize: Corrad Fernandez. A new student, perhaps? She couldn't help but feel a flicker of curiosity. Who was this new student, and how would they fit into the dynamic of her beloved class? As the minutes ticked by, the once quiet corridor outside began to fill with the familiar sound of laughter and excited voices. Gloria's heart swelled with warmth as the first students began to trickle into the classroom, their faces lighting up with joy at the sight of her. They greeted her enthusiastically in French, a gesture that filled her with pride and reminded her of just how much she loved this part of her life. When all the students had finally settled into their seats, Gloria rose with a bright smile and warmly greeted them once again, offering her heartfelt congratulations on the beginning of the new school year. She felt a surge of pride and joy looking at her eager students, ready to begin their first lesson together. Just as she was about to launch into the day's activities, the classroom door creaked open unexpectedly. There was no polite knock, no warning, just the sudden presence of an unfamiliar girl standing in the doorway. Gloria blinked in surprise, momentarily stunned. The girl had long, unruly red hair tied back in a ponytail, and her piercing brown eyes held an air of defiance. Gloria couldn't help but stare, her mind scrambling to remember that there was supposed to be a new student joining her class. But this girl, this wasn't what she had pictured. The newcomer was dressed in worn-out jeans with gaping holes at the knees, and an old, faded t-shirt that had clearly seen better days. Her sneakers were so tattered that the soles were cracked and frayed, while loose threads dangled from the edges of her canvas bag. Gloria could feel the tension in the room as all eyes locked onto the girl, and she herself felt a bit flustered. "I believe you may have mistaken the classroom," Gloria managed to say, her voice wavering slightly as she tried to regain her composure. But the girl simply shook her head, her tone unwavering. "No, my schedule says I have French class now," she responded with an air of confidence that seemed out of place in her shabby appearance. "My name is Corrad Fernandez. I'm new here." A wave of recognition washed over Gloria. "Oh yes, of course," she muttered, trying to mask her surprise as she furrowed her brow in thought. "I saw your name on the list earlier, but something still didn't sit right." Gloria glanced at Corrad's attire again and asked, "Why aren't you in the school uniform?" Corrad simply shrugged as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "I thought on the first day you could wear anything," she said nonchalantly, her eyes casually sweeping across the classroom. The other students had fallen into a stunned silence, their gazes fixed on her with a mixture of curiosity and judgment. Corrad, however, seemed unfazed by the attention. "Where should I sit?" she asked, her tone almost indifferent. Gloria hesitated for a moment before pointing to an empty seat by the window. Corrad made her way across the room, oblivious to the whispers that had already begun to spread among the students. "Is she from the slums?" One voice murmured, followed by quiet snickers from others. A flicker of discomfort passed through Gloria. She didn't appreciate the remark, and it tugged at her heart, but she chose to stay silent, not wanting to lose control of the class so early in the day. With a slight sigh, she returned her focus to the lesson, asking each student in turn to share their summer adventures in Français, of course. For some, it was easy. For others, the words seemed to trip over their tongues. Then it was Carad's turn. She stood confidently and began speaking with such fluency that it took Gloria by surprise. In perfect French, Carad recounted her summer, telling the class how she had visited Disneyland Paris and spent time vacationing on the islands. Her words flowed effortlessly, painting vivid pictures of her experiences. The room buzzed with disbelief as the other students exchanged incredulous glances. Gloria couldn't help but feel impressed, but a seed of doubt crept into her mind. Was Carad really telling the truth? The whispers around the classroom grew louder. "No way," one student hissed. "She's lying for sure. Just look at her clothes. If her family had money for Paris, she wouldn't be dressed like that." The judgmental words hung in the air, filling the space with tension. Gloria glanced at Carad, who had returned to her seat with the same calm, collected expression. She knew that appearances could be deceiving, but the question lingered in her mind: who was Carad Fernandez, really? Gloria felt a surge of anger rise within her. The disrespectful whispers and mocking glances aimed at Carad grated against her sense of fairness. She tapped her pen firmly against the desk, a sharp sound that cut through the murmur of voices. "Silence," she commanded, her voice steady but laced with frustration. The room fell still, the students immediately turning their attention back to her. "I trust you haven't forgotten that you're in class," she continued, her tone stern and unwavering. "And I'd like to remind you that the rules of this school strictly prohibit any disrespectful remarks toward your fellow students. I imagine none of you would want to risk expulsion, would you?" The silence in the room grew thicker, but a muttered voice from the back broke it, dripping with contempt. "Being expelled because of her? Never." Gloria's eyes narrowed as she directed her gaze toward the back row, though she couldn't pinpoint who had spoken. "That was your final warning," she said, her voice sharp with irritation. This was not how she had envisioned the first lesson of the new school year. She had hoped for a fresh, positive start, but instead she was met with defiance and cruelty. She could feel a knot of frustration tightening in her chest as she tried to regain control of the situation. When the class finally ended, Gloria made a quick decision. "Carad, please stay behind for a moment," she said, attempting to keep her voice calm and measured. The other students filed out of the classroom, their exit accompanied by sneaky glances and smug smirks aimed at the newcomer. Carad, however, seemed completely unfazed. She responded to their glances with a cold, indifferent stare, her expression as calm as ever. Once the room had emptied, Carad turned to Gloria with a casual air. "Do you want to talk to me about something, Señorita Lazaro?" she asked, her tone polite but distant. Gloria sank wearily into her chair, feeling the weight of the day's tension settle on her shoulders. "Carad," she began, trying to soften her tone, "I just wanted to remind you that it's important to adhere to the school's dress code. Please don't attend classes in regular clothes again." Carad's response was nonchalant, almost dismissive. "Of course, Señorita. My uniform just didn't dry in time after washing. I was brought here at the last moment." She shrugged as if the matter were trivial, and Gloria found herself nodding in understanding, twirling her pencil between her fingers in thought. "Can I go now?" Señorita Lazaro, Carad asked, her voice flat and emotionless. Gloria nodded absently, but just as Carad reached the door, something made her stop the girl. "Oh, and one more thing, Carad," she called out. The girl paused and turned slightly, waiting. "Your French is excellent," Gloria said, trying to offer a small olive branch, hoping to connect with her on some level. Carad merely shrugged again, as though the compliment meant little to her. "My uncle spoke to me in French since I was a child and read me French books," she said with a bored tone. Then, with a hint of venom creeping into her voice, she added, "He's just a French fanatic." There was something in Karad's words, a trace of bitterness that Gloria couldn't quite place. She watched as the girl left the room, her expression unchanging. A strange heaviness lingered in the air after Karad's departure, leaving Gloria to wonder just what kind of life this new student had lived to carry such an air of indifference. Gloria raised her eyebrows, clearly taken aback by the girl's frank admission. "You don't seem very fond of your uncle," she remarked, her voice tinged with curiosity. Karad hesitated for a brief moment, her gaze shifting away as she muttered, "Not after he brought me here." There was an unmistakable bitterness in her tone that made Gloria pause. It was the kind of bitterness that hinted at deeper wounds, ones that were far from healed. Sensing that now wasn't the time to pry, Gloria decided to let the matter rest. But her mind was already turning over the thought, "I need to learn more about this girl." After Karad left the room, Gloria gathered her things, stacking the textbooks neatly before heading toward the principal's office. Her footsteps echoed down the empty corridor as she made her way to the administrative wing of the school. She couldn't shake the sense of unease that had settled over her since Karad's arrival. Something about the girl's demeanor, the way she seemed to carry a heavy burden on her small shoulders, gnawed at Gloria. When she reached the principal's office, the secretary greeted her with a polite smile and quickly informed the principal of her visit. A moment later, she was ushered into his office, where he sat behind his large oak desk, appearing absorbed in some paperwork. "Good morning, Senorita Lazaro," he said, glancing up briefly before turning his attention back to the papers in front of him. "What brings you here today?" Gloria wasted no time. "Today I had a new student in my class, Karad Fernandez. She arrived in rather shabby clothes, and unfortunately, some of the other kids laughed at her." She watched for the principal's reaction, hoping for some guidance or at least a conversation about how to best support the girl. The principal didn't look up. Instead, he continued to leaf through his papers, as though he were searching for something of great importance. "Karad is enrolled under special circumstances," he finally said, his tone brisk and to the point. "She's been granted a scholarship." That caught Gloria's attention. A scholarship student at this prestigious boarding school was rare. The principal's voice cut through her thoughts. "But you need to treat her like any other student whose wealthy parents have paid for their education." And with that, the conversation abruptly ended. There was no further explanation, no discussion about how to handle the situation with compassion. Gloria nodded politely, thanked the principal, and left the office, but unease still churned in her chest. The following day, Karad showed up in her school uniform, but it was far from the pristine, crisp attire that Gloria was used to seeing on her students. The once white shirt had turned a dull gray with time, the vest had pilled from years of wear, and the skirt was noticeably too large, hanging awkwardly on Karad's thin frame. It was clear that this uniform had been passed down likely more than once and had seen better days. Gloria watched Karad as she walked to her seat, feeling a pang of pity tug at her heart. She could see the glances from the other students, the way they looked at Karad with judgment in their eyes, as if she didn't belong among them. But Karad remained as indifferent as ever, her expression calm and detached as she quietly opened her textbooks and prepared for the lesson. The tension in the room was palpable, and Gloria's attention was pulled away when she heard a murmur from one of the students sitting in front of Karad. The girl, with an exaggerated expression of disgust, whispered loudly enough for others to hear, "It smells bad here," before dramatically picking up her things and moving to another seat. The comment cut through the air like a knife, and Gloria's hands clenched involuntarily around the edge of her desk. She fought the urge to snap at the student, to put an end to the cruelty that was slowly taking root in her classroom. But instead, she took a deep breath, trying to compose herself. She couldn't afford to lose control, not now, not in front of Karad, who seemed so determined to keep her guard up. "Let's focus on today's lesson," Gloria said, her voice steady but firm as she tried to steer the class back on track. Yet, In the back of her mind, she couldn't stop thinking about Karad and the challenges this girl would face not just in her studies, but in navigating the social dynamics of a world that seemed all too eager to judge her by appearances alone. Gloria frowned as she observed the scene unfolding before her but chose to hold her tongue. She couldn't understand how to make these privileged children see that appearances weren't everything. Having come from a modest background herself, she had always been taught to judge people by their character, not their possessions. But these wealthy students, wrapped up in their lives of luxury, didn't seem to grasp that lesson. Gloria felt a pang of empathy for Karad. She knew that the girl needed a chance to show who she was beyond her worn-out clothes. An idea began to form in her mind. Perhaps if Karad were to showcase her remarkable language skills, the students might start to appreciate her intelligence and individuality. Maybe this will help them see her as more than just an outsider, she thought. The following day, Gloria asked Karad to give a presentation in French, hoping it might bridge the gap between her and the other students. And Karad did not disappoint. She stood confidently at the front of the class, delivering a brilliant presentation with flawless French, her bold eyes meeting those of her classmates. But instead of admiration, Gloria saw resentment etched across their faces. Despite her best intentions, Karad's success only seemed to deepen the divide. The students viewed her as a show-off, someone trying too hard to earn favor with the teacher. Gloria's stern presence kept the students silent, but their judgment was palpable. As the days passed, the tension in the classroom only grew. Karad remained an outcast, and the undercurrent of hostility began to seep into every lesson. Gloria could feel the atmosphere shifting, becoming colder, more fractured. At night, she found herself lying awake, staring at the ceiling, her mind consumed with thoughts of how to help Karad fit in. She had always believed that the most crucial element of a classroom was mutual respect, a sense of unity and support among students. But since Karad's arrival, that delicate balance had been shattered, and Gloria felt powerless to restore it. Then, one sleepless night, an idea struck her like a flash of light in the darkness. Perhaps what Karad needed wasn't just acceptance, but also a small gesture of kindness, something that might help her feel more comfortable in her new environment. Gloria decided she would go to the city and buy Karad some new clothes. It was a simple idea, but one she hoped would make a difference. The next day was Sunday, giving Gloria the perfect opportunity to put her plan into action. She woke up early, showered, had a quick breakfast, and set off on her mission. As she wandered through the city, she eventually found an affordable yet stylish store that catered to teenagers. Gloria carefully selected a pair of jeans, a couple of t-shirts, a cozy hoodie, and a cheerful yellow dress that she thought would brighten Karad's wardrobe. She also found a small shop selling bags and picked out a sturdy, attractive canvas bag to replace Karad's frayed one. As she left the store, Gloria felt a sense of satisfaction wash over her. She had done something good, something that might help Karad start to feel like she belonged. To celebrate, Gloria decided to treat herself to a quiet moment at a nearby cafe. She ordered a cappuccino and a fresh croissant, savoring the rich flavors as she allowed herself to relax. Soft French music played in the background, and Gloria found herself drifting into a daydream about Paris. It was a place she had always wanted to visit, especially during her university years, when the allure of French culture had been at its strongest. Once, she had even been on the verge of going, but life, with its unpredictable twists and turns, had led her down a different path. She sighed heavily, trying to push aside the lingering sting of those old disappointments. Her thoughts wandered back to Karad's story of visiting Disneyland Paris over the summer. Gloria shook her head, her skepticism rising again. Could it really be true? It seemed unlikely, especially given the girl's circumstances. Perhaps Karad had simply invented the tale in a bid to impress her new classmates, hoping to carve out a place for herself in their world. But instead of admiration, the story had only widened the chasm between her and the others. Gloria sat back in her chair, her gaze drifting to the window as she watched people passing by. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was missing something, that there was more to Karad than met the eye. But for now, all she could do was hope that the small gesture of new clothes might help, even if only a little. As Gloria sat in the cafe, the realization struck her with surprising clarity. She was constantly thinking about school, her students, and their problems. Even on her day off, she couldn't escape the mental loop of lesson plans, classroom dynamics, and how to help Karad fit in. When had this obsession with work consumed her so fully? She tried to recall the last time she had done something just for herself, something that wasn't related to French or teaching, but nothing came to mind. And her personal life? Gloria smirked at the thought. It had been ages since she'd even thought about dating, let alone been on a date. Here she was, venturing into town for the first time in months, and it wasn't even for herself, it was for one of her students. Gloria sighed, a wave of melancholy washing over her. Perhaps it was time for a change, time to rediscover who she was outside of being a teacher. But the thought was quickly followed by a familiar ache deep in her heart, an old wound that had never fully healed. She wasn't sure if she was ready to face that part of her life again. After settling the bill, Gloria wandered through the town center for a while, trying to shake off the heavy thoughts. She sat by a beautiful fountain, listening to the soft trickle of water, but even there, her mind drifted back to school. Eventually, she decided it was time to head back. The walk back to the school campus felt longer than usual, and by the time she returned, the evening light was already beginning to fade. Without wasting any time, Gloria made her way to the girls' dormitory. She found the dorm supervisor and asked which room Karad Fernandez was staying in. The supervisor directed her to the 4th floor, mentioning that Karad was living alone because none of the other girls wanted to share a room with her. The comment tugged at Gloria's heart, but she kept her composure and made her way up the stairs. When she reached Karad's door, she knocked lightly, unsure of what to expect. A loud voice called out from inside, "Come in, it's open," and Gloria hesitated for a moment before pushing the door open. Karad was sitting on the bed with her legs tucked under her, deeply engrossed in a book. She didn't look up until Gloria greeted her. Recognizing the familiar voice of her French teacher, Karad closed the book and stood up from the bed. "Oh, sorry, I thought it was someone else," she admitted. "But who?" Gloria asked, curious. Karad sighed. "The cleaners often come and ask me to wash dishes in the common kitchen. I thought it was one of them. Usually they burst in with complaints." Gloria's eyebrows shot up in surprise. "But why don't you wash your dishes yourself?" she asked, trying to keep her voice neutral. Karad's response was calm, almost nonchalant. "I'm not used to living in a dormitory," she explained. "At home, the maids did everything for me." Gloria couldn't help but shake her head slightly. She wondered if Karad had a rich imagination and believed in these grand stories she told. "Karad, all the girls who live here come from wealthy families. Many of them have maids too, but they understand that here, they have to clean up after themselves." Karad simply shrugged again, unfazed. "I'm new," she said, sitting back down on the edge of the bed, absent-mindedly playing with the ribbon bookmark in her book. Gloria watched her for a moment, taking in the girl's cool demeanor. Nothing seemed to fluster her, and it was hard to tell what Karad was really thinking. Finally, remembering the reason for her visit, Gloria cleared her throat. "Karad, I brought you a gift," she said, her voice a little softer. She handed the girl the bag with the clothes she had bought earlier that day. Karad looked at the bag with mild surprise as she took it from Gloria's hands. "A gift for me? But why?" she asked, her expression unreadable. Gloria felt a small flush of embarrassment creeping up her neck. "I thought you might need it," she replied, trying to keep her tone casual. Karad peeked into the bag and began pulling out the clothes one by one. "New clothes," she said simply, her eyes lingering on the bright yellow dress. "Thank you, Senorita Lazaro." "That's very kind of you," she added, her voice polite but strangely devoid of emotion. Gloria couldn't hear any real gratitude in Karad's words, no warmth or enthusiasm. It was as if the gift had caught the girl off guard, and she didn't quite know how to react to it. Gloria shifted uncomfortably, suddenly uncertain whether she had done the right thing. "I hope you like what I picked out," she said finally, feeling a bit awkward as the silence stretched between them. Karad glanced up, her expression still neutral. "I'm sure it'll be fine," she replied, folding the dress carefully and placing it back in the bag. But something in her tone made Gloria wonder if this gesture, no matter how well-intentioned, had really made any difference at all. "You have great taste," Karad replied evenly. With that, the teacher said goodbye and left, feeling more than ever that something was wrong with this girl. Time flew by very quickly. The end of the first semester was approaching. Students were supposed to leave for vacation. Gloria had seen Karad in new clothes several times, but bitterly noted that her classmates' attitude toward her hadn't changed. The teacher couldn't do anything about it. Finally, the last school day arrived. There were few classes, and by noon, parents started arriving for their children. Gloria really wanted to see Karad's family and talk to them about the difficulties the girl was going through. Gloria went to the girl's dormitory and entered Karad's room to warn her of her intentions. "I don't have parents. They died 2 years ago," the girl said calmly, packing her things. "My uncle will come for me. He is my guardian." Gloria was momentarily stunned but quickly composed herself and said, "I'm sorry. All right then, I'll talk to your uncle." Karad silently shrugged her shoulders. She closed a modest, old suitcase and together with Gloria, they went downstairs. "Let's wait for my uncle in the parking lot. He should be here any minute," the girl suggested. Gloria nodded, and they headed towards the school's main gates. Today they were open all day. The gatekeepers saw no point in closing them when new parents arrived every 5 minutes. Gloria and Karad sat down on the bench and waited. Finally, a luxurious car drove through the gates. Gloria stared at it with wide eyes. It was so expensive and presentable. "That's Uncle," Karad said with a bored tone, reluctantly getting up from the bench. Gloria couldn't believe her ears. The uncle of a poor student driving such a car? She stood up excitedly. What if Karad was fantasizing again? The car parked, and a young man got out of it. For a moment, Gloria felt like she had seen him somewhere before, but she quickly dismissed the thought. She didn't have such well-off acquaintances. The man had dark, curly hair, styled with gel into a fashionable haircut. He was dressed very stylishly in a shirt of a beautiful mint shade, light blue jeans and pristine white moccasins. His eyes were hidden behind sunglasses. Gloria stared at the man intently, wondering what would happen next. Karad also looked at him, but her eyes showed indifference and steadfastness. The man, noticing the girl, headed straight towards her. "Karad, hey, are you ready to go?" he asked, his tone conveying parental care. His voice seemed painfully familiar to Gloria. The young man tried to embrace the girl, but she pushed his hands away and demonstratively headed towards the car. She didn't take the suitcase. Halfway to the car, Karad turned around and waved to Gloria. "Goodbye, Senorita Lazaro." Gloria waved back, noticing out of the corner of her eye that the young man was staring at her intently. "Lazaro? Did I mishear?" he asked, taking off his glasses. Gloria looked at him and, for a few moments, forgot how to breathe. Francisco. Gloria, she had seen him in her dreams for years, and here he stood before her in reality. And how he had changed. Gloria awkwardly adjusted her hair. She looked more than modest against him in her strict teacher's blouse, the color of coffee with milk, and classic black pants. She lowered her gaze, but a moment later felt Francisco enveloping her in his arms. How many years has it been since we last saw each other?" 8 years and 3 months, Gloria whispered quietly. Such precision. Did you count? Gloria blushed. She couldn't say that for all those 8 years, she had been trying desperately to forget him. You left right after my birthday, so I easily counted it all in my head. Francisco laughed. So, you became a teacher? Gloria nodded. French language, she added. I didn't doubt it, Francisco smiled. He affectionately ran his hand through her hair, then hastily withdrew his hand. Sorry, couldn't resist. Gloria said nothing. She felt tears welling up in her eyes. Suddenly, she felt very sorry for herself, her shattered hopes and dreams, buried under the ashes of time. And I've never been to France, she blurted out. Francisco looked her in the eyes intently. Listen, Gloria, perhaps you wouldn't mind meeting somewhere, talking, he murmured. The girl's heart beat faster. Was he inviting her on a date? I don't mind, she replied. Francisco nodded, and they exchanged phone numbers. Then he hugged her again in farewell, put Karad's suitcase in the trunk, got into the car, and drove away. Gloria watched the car for a long time, until it disappeared from sight. When she got home, she fell onto her bed and buried her face in the pillow. The extraordinary encounter stirred up half-forgotten feelings in her and brought back memories. When Gloria enrolled in the foreign languages department, she didn't yet know which specialization to choose. Students were given a month to ponder, and at its end, large sheets of drawing paper with the names of languages were posted so that everyone could write their surname in the appropriate list. Gloria stood in front of the boards for a long time, still undecided. She liked Italian, French, and even Chinese. What should she choose? Then a tall young man with curly hair approached the boards. He smelled pleasantly of cologne. Gloria looked at him with interest. He was wearing a t-shirt with an image of the Eiffel Tower and simple blue jeans. Taking a marker, he boldly wrote his surname on the sheet under French language. He then smiled at the blushing Gloria and disappeared as suddenly as he had appeared. After this fleeting but exciting episode, the girl had no doubts. She too would study French. On the morning of her first French class, Gloria felt oddly nervous. She couldn't decide what to wear, a dress or jeans and a sweatshirt. Settling on a dress, she added a cocoa-colored cardigan and, glancing at the clock, realized she was late. The lesson had already started when the breathless Gloria appeared at the classroom door. Come in, Senorita, the professor said sternly, but I will ask you not to be late again. Gloria apologized and surveyed the audience. All the seats were taken except one. She hurriedly walked to it, sat down, and only then realized that the boy with the Eiffel Tower on his t-shirt had become her neighbor. I was afraid you chose a different language, he whispered to her. Gloria was surprised. He was thinking about her. Not knowing what to say, she randomly blurted out her name. Pleased to meet you, Gloria. I'm Francisco, the boy charmingly smiled in return. The girl's heart melted. Since then, they went everywhere together, sat side by side in lectures, had lunch in the university cafeteria, did homework together, and attended student concerts. Once, Gloria fell ill and didn't come to class. Her temperature was so high that she couldn't even write a message to warn any of her friends. She slept until noon, and when she finally picked up her phone, she saw several missed calls from Francisco and a message saying, "Where are you? What happened?" Gloria typed that she was at home with a fever and sent a message. The reply came almost instantly. "Do you need anything?" "I'll bring it," the boy replied. "No, thank you." "I'm fine," Gloria wrote back. She didn't want to bother him, but half an hour later, the doorbell rang. Gloria was home alone. Her parents were at work. Her brother and sister were at school. She threw on a robe and went to open the door. Francisco stood on the doorstep with a bouquet of flowers. He also brought oranges, jam, and chocolate pastries. Gloria was very touched by his care. Francisco sat by her bed for a long time. He talked about what happened in class, played her favorite music on his phone, and joked. Gloria had never laughed so much. She was very grateful to the boy for coming to support her. The next day, the girl felt much better and went to class. Francisco seemed somewhat excited and answered her question that he would tell her everything later. Gloria was intrigued. After lectures, they went to their favorite cafe nearby. They sat at a table near the aquarium and ordered fried potatoes and cocoa. Then Francisco looked at Gloria with eager eyes and pulled out a bright brochure from his backpack. Gloria noticed a familiar image of the Eiffel Tower on the cover. "What's this?" the girl asked with interest. "Our ticket to the future," Francisco mysteriously replied, handing the brochure to Gloria. She glanced at the cover. "Study exchange in the heart of France," she read. "What do you think?" he asked. "Do you want to study in France?" Gloria asked with a dropped voice, looking into Francisco's eyes. "Of course I do," he replied, and his eyes sparkled with joy. "But not alone. With you." Gloria felt her heart warm sweetly. "It will be a magical adventure, won't it?" dreamily said Francisco. "We'll discover so much new and interesting together." Gloria smiled. The prospect of going to France with Francisco appealed to her more with each passing minute. She thoughtfully flipped through the brochure. "But does the trip require a lot of money?" she cautiously asked. "Yes, for the ticket and accommodation," Francisco nodded. Gloria knew that Francisco's family was quite wealthy. His parents wouldn't have trouble paying for his trip. Her situation was different. She was fortunate to have received a scholarship for university, otherwise she would have had to give up on her studies. Her family wasn't well off. Her dad worked as a car mechanic, and her mom was a nurse. Moreover, unlike Francisco, Gloria wasn't the only child in the family. She had a younger sister and brother. "I'll ask my parents tonight if they can afford to pay for my trip," Gloria promised. "They must," Francisco exclaimed fervently. "Such an opportunity comes once in a lifetime. Only first and second year students can participate in the program." Gloria nodded and quickly changed the subject. She didn't want to make plans prematurely. During dinner, she told her parents about Francisco's proposal. They exchanged puzzled looks, and her dad, clearing his throat, said, "Gloria, dear, we understand how much you want to go. But the amount needed for your ticket and stay in another country is beyond our means. We spend a lot on Pedro's clothes. He's a boy and tears his pants almost every day. And Luisa is graduating soon and going to university." Gloria didn't lift her gaze from her plate. "Forgive us, honey," her mom said gently, stroking her hand. Gloria nodded understandingly and didn't mention the trip anymore. After dinner, Gloria sent a brief message to Francisco. "Sorry, but I won't be able to go." She then buried her face in her pillow and sobbed uncontrollably, her heart aching with a deep sense of loss and resignation. The next morning, Francisco stood waiting for her at the entrance of the academic building, his expression a mixture of concern and impatience. "Didn't work out?" he asked, his voice carrying an edge of anxiety rather than a customary greeting. Gloria nodded solemnly, her eyes cast downward. "My parents can't afford it," she said softly, the weight of her financial constraints palpable in her tone. Francisco's face tightened with concern, and he reached out to take her bag, falling into step behind her as they walked into the building. "Listen," he began as they walked. "What if I ask my parents to help?" Gloria's eyes widened with alarm. "No. What are you thinking? It's not appropriate. They'll think I'm just using you." Francisco gently halted her, turning her to face him. His hands rested on her shoulders with a comforting firmness. "Don't say that. They'll understand how much you mean to me, and that I don't want to part with you. I refuse to give up on our dream. If it's just about money, that's something I can handle." The earnestness in Francisco's voice made Gloria feel both embarrassed and deeply touched. She felt a pang of pride and self-respect, which made it difficult for her to accept help. "I can't do that," she replied quietly, her voice tinged with frustration and resolve. Francisco gazed into her eyes with unwavering determination. After a long moment of silence, he declared firmly, "Then I'll find a job and earn the money for your trip." Gloria was taken aback, her eyes widening in disbelief. "You'd do that for me?" she asked, her voice filled with astonishment and a hint of hope. "Why not?" Francisco replied, his fingers gently brushing through her hair in a gesture of tenderness. "I've already told you you mean a lot to me." Their exchange drew curious glances from passers-by, and Gloria felt a flush of embarrassment rise to her cheeks. Francisco leaned closer, his breath warm against her ear as he whispered, "You mean more to me than just a friend." A wave of warmth and affection swept over Gloria, and though she longed to embrace Francisco, she knew the university was not the place for such displays. She restrained herself, settling for the gentle touch of his hand as they began to ascend the stairs together. True to his word, Francisco secured a part-time job later that very day. Gloria felt a deep discomfort at the thought of causing him so much trouble. When she voiced her concerns, Francisco merely brushed them aside with a reassuring smile. "It's no trouble at all. I actually enjoy my new job. The experience will be valuable." "But why do you need experience as a courier?" Gloria questioned, her curiosity piqued. "You're already doing so much for me." "You have to start somewhere," Francisco shrugged with a pragmatic air. Every director was once at the bottom of the career ladder. Gloria was struck by his unexpected wisdom, and as the days passed, her admiration for Francisco deepened. It was clear that many girls from the faculty harbored feelings for him, but everyone knew he had eyes only for Gloria. With just over a month remaining before their trip, Gloria offered to find a job to contribute financially, but Francisco simply shook his head. "I'll take care of the financial matters myself. You should focus on your studies. The better your French is, the easier your transition will be once we're in Paris." Time seemed to slip through their fingers, and 2 weeks before their departure, Francisco and Gloria secured their tickets to Paris. Gloria could hardly believe her fortune. Would everything truly come to fruition? Would their shared dream materialize into reality? If you truly desire something, you must act on it. It's all within your control, Francisco advised her, his words imbued with sincerity. Gloria gazed at him with profound gratitude. Without his encouragement and support, she would never have dared to dream so big. She had grown accustomed to scraping by with very little since childhood. "Just imagine," Gloria said with a smile, her voice brimming with excitement, "we'll celebrate your birthday, and the very next evening, we'll be wandering the streets of Paris." Everything seemed to be falling into place perfectly, and Gloria felt as if she were living in a dream. Yet, just a week before her birthday, the dream was abruptly interrupted. Louisa, Gloria's younger sister, returned from school with a high fever. That night, a doctor was urgently called. After a thorough examination, the doctor advised that Louisa needed to be hospitalized immediately. Their mother accompanied Louisa to the hospital. Gloria desperately wanted to go with them, but her mother reminded her of her early lectures the next day. Reluctantly, Gloria stayed behind, unable to find solace in sleep as worry for her little sister gnawed at her. The following day brought disheartening news. Louisa's fever remained dangerously high, and the doctors recommended a comprehensive examination to determine the cause. Despite her turmoil, Gloria attended her lectures, though she could barely focus. Francisco immediately noticed the distress in her demeanor. Almost in tears, Gloria confided in him, her voice trembling with anxiety. Francisco embraced her tightly, his presence a soothing balm amidst her turmoil. "All we can do now is hope for the best," he whispered, his voice a comforting murmur against her ear. However, Louisa's condition continued to deteriorate. The doctors, With only 3 days left before their long-anticipated trip and just 2 days remaining before Gloria's birthday, her excitement had been completely overshadowed by the worry and distress she felt for her sister. Her every thought and emotion were now consumed by Louisa's illness, and the once joyous anticipation of their journey to Paris seemed to have faded into the background. Francisco, ever sensitive to Gloria's turmoil, remained steadfast in his support. He offered her a shoulder to lean on, providing comfort and understanding without the need for further explanation. It was clear to him how deeply distressed Gloria was, and he chose to stand by her side with quiet empathy. After a series of medical examinations, Louisa was finally brought back home. Her condition necessitated strict bed rest and round-the-clock care, which meant that someone had to be constantly by her side. Their mother, recognizing the gravity of the situation, made the difficult decision to quit her job so she could dedicate herself fully to Louisa's care. She spent her days by Louisa's bedside, holding her hand and offering soothing words, trying to provide as much comfort as possible. Gloria, too, stepped up, doing everything she could to support her family, balancing her own responsibilities with the urgent need to care for her ailing sister. One evening, as Gloria left Louisa's room to get some water, she overheard a conversation between her mother and father. "We won't be able to hire a caregiver," her mother's voice trembled with worry. "I don't know how we're going to manage after Gloria leaves for her trip." The words struck Gloria with a profound sense of guilt and helplessness. No one in her family had explicitly suggested that she should cancel her trip, but the underlying implication was clear. It was evident that her presence at home was essential, and the responsibility of caring for Louisa fell heavily on her shoulders. Gloria's heart ached with the realization that her dream of traveling to Paris was now at odds with her sense of duty to her family. The decision to forgo the trip felt like an unbearable sacrifice, but she knew it was the right one. On the day before her birthday, Gloria made the difficult decision to call Francisco and break the news. Her voice was heavy with sorrow as she spoke. "Francisco, I'm so sorry, but I won't be able to go to Paris with you. I've decided to stay here with my sister and mom. They need me." Francisco listened quietly, absorbing the gravity of her words. He understood that arguing or trying to change her mind would be pointless. Gloria's determination was firm, and once she had made up her mind, it was clear that nothing would sway her. "But can we at least celebrate your birthday together?" Francisco's voice was gentle, filled with a mix of sadness and understanding. Gloria's response came through her tears. "I wish we could, Francisco, but I can't leave home right now. My family needs me, and I need to be here for them." With a heavy heart, she quietly ended the call, feeling a deep and painful void. The silence that followed was filled with unspoken emotions, and Gloria's heart was heavy with the weight of the decisions she had made and the sacrifices she had to endure. The following morning, just as the weight of the previous day's decision settled heavily on Gloria, the doorbell rang, piercing the quiet of the house. With her mother upstairs caring for Louisa, her brother at school, and her father away at work, Gloria was the only one available to answer the door. She opened it to find Francisco standing on the threshold, his hands holding a magnificent bouquet of crimson roses. "Happy birthday, my love," Francisco said softly, his voice filled with tenderness. He leaned in to place a gentle kiss on Gloria's cheek, a gesture that nearly brought tears to her eyes. The sight of the roses and the warmth of his affection were almost overwhelming. But Francisco was not finished. "I didn't just bring flowers," he continued with a shy smile. "I've prepared a special birthday celebration for you right here in your kitchen." Without waiting for a response, he brushed past Gloria and headed straight for the kitchen, carrying several large, bulging bags. As Gloria followed him into the kitchen, she was greeted with a feast that seemed to have been plucked from a gourmet dream. The counter was soon overflowing with an array of delights: salmon sandwiches, savory olives, rich chocolate pastries, 4 different types of cheese, and other mouth-watering delicacies. The tantalizing aroma of the spread made Gloria's senses whirl with delight. "You're going to so much trouble for me," Gloria said, her voice filled with genuine gratitude and a touch of awe. "You really didn't have to. It's just a birthday." "It's not just any birthday," Francisco replied with a resolute shake of his head. "It's your birthday, and you deserve the very best. What I've brought is just a small token. I wish I could offer you so much more," he added, his eyes reflecting a mix of sorrow and longing. "I had dreams of showing you the world." With a sigh that carried the weight of his unfulfilled dreams, Francisco lowered his gaze, a shadow of sadness crossing his features. "I can't believe that tomorrow I'll be flying to Paris alone." Moved by his words, Gloria reached out, enveloping him in a gentle hug. She ran her fingers through his hair, offering him comfort. "This isn't forever. Luisa will recover. I truly believe that. You'll come back, and we'll have our chance to travel together." Francisco lifted his head, hope rekindled in his eyes. "Promise." Gloria nodded firmly, her voice steady with conviction. "Yes, I promise," she assured him. The rest of the day was filled with warmth and joy as they spent time talking and laughing. When Gloria's mother came down to the kitchen, she announced that Luisa had fallen asleep. She then urged Gloria and Francisco to enjoy the day. "Today is your special day," she said kindly. "You two should go for a walk in the park. The weather is beautiful." Francisco, seizing on the suggestion, brightened up. "I'll take the boat and give you a ride." "Gloria," he declared enthusiastically. Before Gloria could fully process what was happening, Francisco had already taken her hand and was leading her towards the door. "Mom, I'll be back soon," she called out, her voice tinged with both excitement and a hint of apprehension. Their walk was a bittersweet memory that Gloria would later reflect on with a mix of joy and pain. Francisco was attentive and affectionate throughout, never letting go of her hand, frequently pulling her into warm hugs and showering her with tender kisses. The intimacy of the moments they shared made the eventual farewell all the more heart-wrenching. When the time came to say goodbye, the weight of their parting was almost too much to bear. Francisco's eyes glistened with unshed tears as he suddenly said, "I can't go." Gloria quickly placed a hand over his mouth, her own tears threatening to spill. "You have to go," she urged softly, "for both of us. And remember, it's only one semester." Francisco, though clearly pained, nodded in agreement. "And then I'll come back," he promised, his voice firm despite the tremor in it. "You'll wait for me, won't you?" Gloria's affirmation was resolute. "Absolutely. I'll write to you every day." Francisco pulled her into a final, lingering embrace before they parted ways. The next day he flew to Paris, as planned. True to his word, he wrote to Gloria every day, and they spent long hours on video calls over the weekends. The months passed in a blur of anticipation and correspondence. Gloria eagerly counted down the days until Francisco's return, but their hopes were soon dashed. When Francisco called her just before his expected return, Gloria immediately sensed that he had something significant to share. "I've canceled my ticket, Gloria," he said, his voice heavy with an unspoken weight. Gloria's heart sank as if it had been leaden with disappointment. "Why?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "I was offered a job here," Francisco explained. "A position with a very promising young company. They noticed my potential and extended an offer. It's not the top position, but they're covering my accommodation." "So you're staying in Paris?" Gloria's voice cracked slightly as she tried to hold back her tears. Francisco nodded solemnly. "But you'll come to visit me, won't you?" he asked, hope lingering in his tone. Gloria wanted to say yes, to offer some semblance of reassurance, but she knew it was impossible. Luisa's condition was still precarious, and her presence at home was crucial. Francisco, understanding the unspoken reasons, accepted the situation with quiet grace. Their communications continued for a while, but gradually, the frequency of their conversations dwindled. Life's relentless march had drawn them apart, creating an emotional distance that neither could bridge. One evening, as Gloria lay in bed, her phone beeped, jolting her from her thoughts. She pulled herself away from the pillow and glanced at the display. It was a message from Francisco. "I want to see you. Are you free tonight?" "Yes," Gloria replied, her mind racing as she considered what to wear. "I'll come by at 7. "Be ready," Francisco's message concluded, leaving Gloria with a mix of anticipation and nervous excitement as she prepared for their reunion. Excitement bubbled within Gloria as she leaped out of bed, her heart racing with anticipation. She hurried to her wardrobe, her fingers deftly searching through her clothes. Her gaze landed on a stunning crimson silk dress, which had only been worn once before at last year's school prom. Without a second thought, she retrieved it from the hanger and carefully laid it out on the bed, smoothing the fabric with tender care. The dress was perfect for the occasion, and Gloria envisioned how elegantly her hair could be styled into an updo to complement it. She turned to her jewelry box, where she found a pair of long golden earrings adorned with a scattering of clear zircons. These had been a cherished heirloom from her mother, worn on her wedding day. Gloria fastened the earrings, admiring their sparkle and how they caught the light. They added a touch of sophistication to her ensemble. As the hours ticked by, Gloria's anticipation grew. At exactly 7 p.m., she made her way to the parking lot, her excitement palpable. She spotted Francisco's car rounding the corner, and a thrill of nervousness and exhilaration coursed through her. It had been years since they last saw each other, and she wondered how their conversation would flow, fearing that the time apart might have created a distance between them. Her worries proved to be unfounded. When Francisco's car finally rolled into the parking lot, he stepped out with a warm smile and immediately greeted her with a gentle kiss on the cheek. Gloria felt a rush of relief and joy as she noticed the admiring glint in his eyes. "You look fantastic," he murmured, his voice laced with genuine admiration. He himself was impeccably dressed in a dark suit paired with a light shirt, complementing Gloria's elegant attire perfectly. With a courteous gesture, Francisco opened the car door for her, and she settled into the passenger seat, feeling a wave of comfort and familiarity. As he walked around to the driver's side, Gloria noticed a crimson rose in his hand, its vibrant color matching her dress perfectly. "For you," Francisco said softly, presenting the flower with a tender smile. Gloria accepted the rose, inhaling its sweet fragrance with a smile. As Francisco drove, the car was soon filled with the easy flow of conversation. Gloria felt a sense of ease wash over her, realizing that Francisco had not changed as much as she had feared. The cheerful, straightforward young man she remembered was still very much present, and it was as if the 8 years that had passed were nothing more than a fleeting moment. "I feel like we never parted," Francisco said softly, as if he could sense Gloria's unspoken thoughts. Gloria smiled and nodded, feeling a wave of warmth and familiarity. It was as if the years of separation had melted away, leaving only the comfort of their shared history. They arrived at a charming restaurant, where a courteous host guided them to their table, set in a cozy, dimly lit corner. The ambience was perfect. Soft music played in the background, and the flickering candlelight added a touch of romance to the evening. Francisco, ever the attentive gentleman, ordered a bottle of champagne and an array of delectable dishes, creamy pasta and savory delights. Gloria chose a fragrant risotto, the rich aroma promising a delightful culinary experience. As the young waiter departed to place their order, Gloria turned to Francisco with a question that had been lingering in her mind. "Tell me about Karad," she requested gently, her eyes reflecting genuine curiosity. Francisco's expression shifted to one of sadness. "Karad is the daughter of my cousin," he began, his voice carrying the weight of sorrow. She and her husband tragically died in a car accident 2 years ago. Gloria's heart ached at the news. She reached out and placed a comforting hand on Francisco's. "I'm so sorry to hear that," she said sincerely. Francisco continued, his gaze distant. "Since then, I've been her guardian. It's been challenging. She's really on her own now." Gloria listened attentively, nodding in understanding. "So what she said about Disneyland and having maids to take care of everything, it's all true?" she inquired. Francisco hesitated for a moment before giving a small, awkward nod. "Yes, unfortunately, that's the case." Gloria's curiosity was piqued. "But why did Karad come to school in such shabby clothes?" she asked, her brow furrowing in confusion. Francisco ran a hand through his hair, a playful grin appearing on his face. "Let me explain," he said, his tone lightening. "There's more to the story than you might think." As Gloria settled back in her chair, her interest fully engaged, Francisco began to unravel the details. "When Karad's parents died, I was willing to do anything to make her happy. I bought her expensive toys and designer clothes, took her to places most kids only dream about. And I spoiled her rotten. Karad became spoiled and arrogant. She didn't appreciate what was done for her. She thought it was all normal. Karad became unbearable. She had no friends because she could only socialize with those who admired her. She never showed compassion or kindness to anyone. When I realized my mistake, I tried to talk to her. But she wouldn't listen to me. She became a true narcissist." Gloria nodded understandingly again. The waiter brought champagne and plates of steaming dishes. Francisco thanked the young man. "And then you decided," Gloria began to conjecture, her voice tinged with curiosity. "I chose to send her to your school under the guise of being a poor student. I wanted Karad to experience something valuable," Francisco confessed, his tone carrying a hint of regret. "I spoke with the principal, and he agreed to present it as a scholarship." Gloria's mind raced back to her peculiar conversation with the principal, and a sense of clarity washed over her. But the other children mocked her. "It broke my heart to see Karad suffer, so I went into the city and bought her some new clothes." Francisco took Gloria's hand in his grip warm and reassuring. "Yes, I know. Karad told me everything. She grew very fond of you and became deeply attached. She described you as the kindest and most beautiful teacher in the entire school." A genuine smile spread across Gloria's face, a wave of contentment washing over her at the recognition of her efforts. "Will Karad be returning to school next semester?" she inquired, her voice hopeful. Francisco's expression grew somber as he shook his head. "No, she's had enough of this experience. Besides, we're moving again." The smile on Gloria's face slowly faded, a pang of sorrow pricking at her heart. Again she asked, her voice heavy with sadness. "Yes, we're heading back to France," Francisco said with a chuckle, seemingly unaware of the sadness in Gloria's eyes. "I have a house there, complete with a pool and a garden. It's been a dream of mine for a long time," he added, his eyes shining with excitement. A sudden squeeze of her hand jolted Gloria's attention. Francisco's eyes twinkled with a playful spark as he leaned closer. "And you know what?" he asked, a mischievous grin spreading across his face. What Gloria's voice was filled with surprise and anticipation. "You're coming with us," Francisco declared with a twinkle of mischief in his eyes. Gloria's mouth fell open in disbelief. "Me? To France?" she stammered, trying to process the unexpected offer. Francisco nodded, his expression full of playful encouragement. "Or do you not want to?" he teased with a wink. Gloria straightened her posture, took a deep, steadying breath, and let her heart guide her response. "I want to. I truly want to," she said, her voice bubbling with joy and excitement. With a celebratory flourish, Francisco reached for the champagne, the cork popping with a satisfying crack. To dreams coming true, he declared solemnly, pouring the sparkling liquid into glasses and raising his own in a toast. Gloria's smile brightened as she clinked her glass with his. As the bubbles danced in the glasses, Francisco took Gloria's hand once more and gazed deeply into her eyes. "Gloria, there's something I've been meaning to tell you." Her eyes widened in surprise, anticipation hanging in the air. 8 years ago, I made a grave mistake. I shouldn't have let you go. All this time, Francisco's voice faltered, laden with a blend of remorse and longing. What have you learned from Gloria's story so far? Life can present challenges, but with compassion, resilience, and an open heart, we can turn adversity into something beautiful. Share in the comments below one lesson from this story that you will bring to practice in your own life. If you like this video, please leave your comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel.